Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Go With Your Gut podcast. I am glad to be back with you. My name is Lauren Dreyer, if you are new here, and we're going to take a little bit of a different spin as we have in the past because a lot of things that I've learned recently is that going with your gut, as always, has meant, maybe taking the feedback from others externally about you. Maybe you take that with a grain of salt, but there's been a lot of talk recently about, in my opinion anyway, people being challenging, or I had a conversation yesterday about nobody is allowed to disagree anymore. It can't be like, uh, agree to disagree, be okay with having differing opinions. It seems like that is not allowed anymore. And honestly, I don't understand why, because everybody has different experiences, everybody has different perspectives, and what an asset that can be to you personally, to companies, um, organizations, whoever. And I say this because whether it be professional, personal, um, whatever you do, you're always going to be around people who are different, think different, have different experiences, different backgrounds, differing opinions for whatever reason. And, sometimes when we are in those conversations, whether it be at work or not, in the back of our head, we're like, but why? And it's become such a black mark to question somebody because it could be a sign that, you're questioning authority or telling them that what they're talking about has no credit or no value, when in fact, I would actually think that it's the opposite. When when somebody is pitching an idea or, saying, "Hey, what about this? Have you ever thought about, this spin?" Or maybe taking it just a little bit different direction. And what would you think about this? How would this work with what we're currently doing? I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but what if we update the wheel a little bit, right? And so many people are afraid to speak up because they think that their idea or their just lack of understanding is going to make them look stupid. It's going to make them look uneducated or, whatever the case may be. And I thought the other day as I was driving my kids home from something, and my kids are super curious. And yes, that means a lot of times we play 1 million questions based on the weirdest things that I'm like, I don't know how that works, or especially to explain it to a kid, like that's something that we're going to have to look up because I don't know. But it got me thinking that kids are always encouraged to have that childlike curiosity, that why does this happen? Why is this? Um, my son the other day was asking, why do planes do this? Or, what happens? Why does this happen? Like, cause and effect relationship. And I'm like, well, I know on general terms, but I don't know the details of it because like I don't know. And I thought, he is just asking because he doesn't know and he's trying to connect those dots for himself. He's trying to understand full concept, get the bigger picture so that he knows how the smaller pieces work together, right? And it's kind of like kind of like failing. And as kids, it's okay to fail. It's okay to, fall on your butt or not do something right because we're learning. It's kids, we're expanding the world. But at some point, as we get to adulthood, um, it doesn't feel okay to do those things. It doesn't feel okay to try something new and fail. It doesn't feel okay to I'd say respectfully challenge or just ask why. And I have become a very big why person, and again, not to be disrespectful, but more of because I am a very big person picture to understand the smaller parts. Um, I I need to understand how the full engine works so that I understand why this piece needs to work like that. Not that I care or want to change the way the whole process is, but in order for me to understand um, how this piece works or why it works that way contributes to the whole, I need to know the big picture. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So why do we lose the childlike curiosity and the ability to ask why going into adulthood? Because you know we we get told that something is wrong or like you're asking a stupid question, and then you get to the point where people are like, no question is a stupid question. And I when you're sitting in a meeting, whether it be a big meeting or a small one, maybe it's a one-on-one meeting, whatever it is, and you're maybe it's a strategy meeting or you're fixing a process or a problem or something like that. And you're trying to wrap your brain around it, or maybe you're trying to shift something and um you say, okay, let me play devil's advocate. Why? Why do we do it like this? Why does this process need to stay like this? Why do we do it like that? Thinking about the end goal and bringing together, why is this going to work? You very well may be, okay, great. It's a great answer. I understand now, but I ask a lot of why because I want context. I just want understanding. But I am no stranger to becoming defensive, but it seems like when sometimes we get asked why, it gets taken a lot as criticism. Okay, well, why do you do this? Why? Why, what's the thought process behind that? And a lot of times, instead of taking it as criticism and getting defensive, the process and the thought frame, the perspective needs to be changed to why does it happen like that? Because I want to understand. I want to um I want to gain the bigger picture. And let me tell you, old habits die hard because I still do it sometimes. And I have to pause for a second and be like, no, they are not challenging. It is for their context and understanding. And so, that led me down a rabbit hole, of course. And I'm thinking, you know, what an asset to have in a meeting somebody who is willing to be okay doing that, who, whether they mean to or not, whether they're like, hey, I'm gonna play devil's advocate, whether they mean to do any of that purposefully or not, and they sit there and say, okay, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm gonna play devil's advocate, or just why? Why do we do this? Why is this an issue? Why does this process need to change? And it's meant to get juices flowing. It's meant to um meant to the get to the root of things so that the root can be tweaked or whatever needs to happen. But what an asset to have somebody in all levels or multiple people in levels to say, you know, why? Why do we do this? Why is this process still here? Why do we need to keep it? Or, insert whatever you want to with that. Or why do we need to keep it the same? Why does this structure need to stay the same? Or just why? Right? And instead of everybody getting defensive about like they're questioning authority or they're questioning my judgment, anything like that, it is for their context. The same can be said for um, home relationships. For instance, I'm a lot of people in relationships are opposites. Opposites attract. We've heard this age-old phrase, and I have found it to be true with relationships as well as sometimes teams because you need people to be opposites so you can fill those gaps, right? So I used to be very, very defensive about a lot of things because I was really insecure and thinking, I know why I did this, but they're calling it into question instead of just being curious, asking why. So when you're in communication with a friend or partner, spouse, whatever it is, um, maybe that that view and perspective needs to be, okay, I don't think the same as this person. Obviously, we know this. So when they ask me why, they're asking for their own understanding. They're asking for context. They're asking um, They're asking to understand how you got to that place so that they can understand how you think more. Because nobody that I know is actually telepathic. We can be able to read people really well, but there are a lot of times where I'm like, okay, if I'm understanding correctly, this is where you're going with that. And they're like, well, not really. And I say, oh, okay. I'm glad I asked. I'm glad because I was I was taking it as this when you meant something like this. Or, maybe I had another conversation yesterday of, I yes like a lot of detail, but give me the highlighted version, and if I'm not understanding or I need more context, then I'll ask for it because we get so much just information to consume with everything that, we almost get on information overload of anything and everything. So when somebody is trying to explain a new process, you've already got all the things bouncing around in your head. And sometimes it takes a minute and you need to say, okay, here's this concept. Here's what I'm trying to understand. As I wrap my head around those higher level concepts, now let me come back and ask the questions and for more detail. And it, I'm always 100% one to say, I will be back with you because as soon as I sit with this information and think through it, I don't have any questions right now. I probably will later. I probably will, tonight when I am going to bed. But you get that email and it's like a follow-up. And I don't know how many of you do the same thing as I do. And you see a follow-up regarding this, and you know, the thought is automatically, it's criticism, it's negative. And, maybe that's my anxiety. I don't know. But I open it up and it's just clarifying questions or, um, maybe, well, we can do it this way or we can do it this way, but here's pieces of this that are, currently getting discussed or discovered, or here's what we're working through right now. And so they might say, okay, help me to understand this. Why? Why? Because I, again, much like my home life, we think very different. And so it's making sense of different concepts as to how we need to understand it and how maybe we need it explained in a different way. Or the person needs to ask a different question so that they understand it as it relates to them. And that happens a lot in companies where, you know, there's so many different departments in companies, whether it be operations, accounting, IT, um, I don't know, a lot of different, whatever different departments, and everybody ha plays their separate role, like an engine, right? Um, you're all part of the bigger picture as the engine that makes it run smoothly. But every piece plays its part to do that. And if all of the pieces can't talk to each other and communicate, it doesn't work, right? I was having this conversation again yesterday, and it's like, okay, well, a sensor is going off to say, hey, something's a little faulty. Maybe you need to check something. Maybe you need a little bit more oil. Um, And you want to check it at that point to make sure all the communication is right because your check engine light goes on, right? And there is likely a little bit bigger of an issue that you need to get taken care of a little bit more urgently than maybe just a um, little sensor message, right? And but all of those different departments talk differently. They function differently. And so when departments are then collaborating, there is there's a translation of concepts because there might be one central concept, but it may be different for each department and how it translates into what they do. So when somebody from a different department comes to you and says, okay, help me understand, why does this happen this way? It may not be criticism. It is, I'm trying to understand how this needs to change, but for that, I need to know how this works and this functions so that I can reconnect the processes back and they can run smoothly. There's no friction there. It's well oiled because we made sure that they connected correctly instead of getting a code 400 error message saying, well, this didn't quite connect, right? Um, and maybe it's just a matter of, one symbol in the code, or hey, I didn't hit submit, or I didn't hit approve, whatever it is. So going back to why, have that have that childlike curiosity so that somebody can explain to you from their point of view, and then you can ask the questions to finish connecting those dots. Because if we don't ask the questions because we don't care, that is an issue. If somebody just doesn't care, then the system and the flow is never going to work right. And you can make as many tweaks as you want, but if you're just, doing random fires and saying, I hope this works, you've got to have the full picture. You've got to have that higher level of communication and understanding and saying, okay, now I see where the target is that I need to shoot for rather than just shooting out the window and, saying, well, I hope the target's in front of the window because then I'll hit it, right? So, I've said so a lot today. That's really annoying me. Um, Childlike curiosity, asking the questions why. It shouldn't come from a place of um, criticism. Does it sometimes? Yes, it does. But don't default to that. That should not be the default. The default should be they are trying to understand, they are trying to get more context so that we can dig deeper into it and connect it at a deeper level rather than um, rather than being critical or rather than questioning capability or authority or um, whatever else. It shouldn't come from a place of criticism and um yeah, it shouldn't come from a place of criticism or credibility. It should come from a place of curiosity because we need to be curious about those things in order to learn more. And you never know what you're going to learn when you can dig deeper with the questions of why. New concepts are born, innovation happens. Um, you stay with the time, you stay with the trend of why do we do this? This is why. Well, why could it not be like this? Because don't know if you knew about this or not, but it's newer, and I think it could probably work a little bit better and more efficiently now. Refresh the concept, um, refresh the processes and the software like you would your computer or your phone. Sometimes it just needs a refresh to make the system go good and have the new capabilities, right? So with that, I say yes, still go with your gut. And when you want to speak up and ask why, please don't be afraid, but understand that you may just need to phrase it a little bit differently, especially when you don't have that filter and it's just, well, why? Why? Why could you not do this? And work on the tone a little bit so it doesn't come off as criticism, it comes off as curious. And with that, I will see you next time.